Okay, so hello everyone. Today I'm talking about my PhD project in which we studied if and how instantaneous fluctuations in heart rate could scale with prediction. Yeah, and cardiac deceleration is famously studied in the context of threat and something very salient, but we wondered, how about some casual probabilistic learning that we basically face every moment of every day? And we also wanted to look at moment-to-moment changes in the intervals between heartbeats instead of considering several heartbeats over a longer interval of time. And of course, we wanted also to link it to neural activity. Now, to study this, we employed a simple probabilistic learning paradigm. In this task, there were 3 blocks of 100 trials. In each block, there were 2 cues, one aversive and one safe. Subjects had to approach or avoid them, and then this resulted in 70 to 30% probability of positive or negative feedback. We analyzed 34 subjects and performed single trial analysis using Bayesian mixed models. Now, just to clarify, prediction error at a single trial level is the difference between outcome and expectation, outcome of this trial. And expectation is what you have when you made the decision, but before you obtained an outcome. And this is based on the accumulated evidence from previous trials. Now, when I say instantaneous change in heart rate, I basically mean the difference of subsequent RR intervals. So, for instance, we consider such intervals between heartbeats surrounding feedback presentation during probabilistic learning and also including feedback. But we always scale these intervals by the previous one. So we look at the raw change in milliseconds between subsequent RR intervals. Now, before we could look at their association to prediction, we also had to describe what was the general dynamic in the trials in our task, and we observed that phase of cardiac cycle when feedback was presented was actually crucial to how heart rate dynamics looked like. So if feedback was presented early in heart cycle phase in systole, which is the yellow line here, the first heartbeat after feedback showed a pronounced deceleration in response to the outcome. However, if feedback was presented later in heart cycle phase in diastole, which is the blue line here, only the second heartbeat after feedback showed pronounced deceleration in response to the outcome. So that's kind of like a fact that's important to remember. Now, this is kind of the same, just visualized differently. You can see that there is a cardiac deceleration in expectation and in response to an outcome continues up to the first heartbeat after feedback in systole and kind of up to the second one in diastole, and that's also the most pronounced reaction. And then the heart quickly speeds up. When we looked at the association with expectation, we observed that many of these interbeat intervals are actually related to it, and the strongest association was between the last interbeat interval before feedback presentation, with expectation, and with prediction error. We could see that this largest interbeat interval that supposedly shows reaction to outcome, that's so now my heart like contracted a little bit. This is the point, so when the heart shows the most pronounced deceleration in response to the outcome, this is when it kind of also reflects the features of outcome, so this is when it starts being associated with prediction error, not only with expectation. And then when the heart speeds up, the association with different features of outcome, variance, absolute prediction error, just prediction error, it increases. So yeah, that's basically just to recap. We also observed, because prediction error and expectation are negatively associated between themselves, we observed also that associations with heartbeats are basically also going in different direction. And again, as I said, The strongest association with expectation was of the last heartbeat before feedback, and then it kind of by inertia continues and washes out. And the association with features of feedback, such as prediction error, valence, etc., it actually becomes a bit stronger up to the third or fourth heartbeat after feedback, even though I think amazingly, it starts immediately at the first heartbeat that actually includes feedback within its interval. Yeah, so just to quickly comment, our effects are really small. If you think about heart rate variability, it can be on the scale of 200 milliseconds just due to physiological variation. Our effects are on the scale of 10 milliseconds, but if you think about it, it's kind of an interbeat interval could be 10 milliseconds longer or shorter, depending on how we learn. So that's kind of interesting, and I guess we could look into it more. And finally, we linked it to neural activity, and we observed that cardiac deceleration was linked specifically to P300, so to a very pronounced parietal topography, which is in probabilistic learning literature normally linked to updating of beliefs, learning, memory consolidation, and such. And interestingly, again, phase plays a crucial role here. So, as I said, in systole, the first heartbeat after feedback shows this most pronounced deceleration reaction to outcome, and in systole, P300 linked specifically to the deceleration of the first heartbeat after feedback. However, in diastole, it wasn't the case. P300 actually scaled with the amplitude, with deceleration of the second heartbeat after feedback. So the one that I said showed the most pronounced deceleration when feedback was given in diastole. Yeah, so that's, no, doesn't change. Oh, yes. So just to recap, and we just wanted to highlight, and maybe these results highlight by themselves, that prediction is so crucial to how we are, what we do, to body-brain interactions, that it's actually reflected in every beat of our heart. Yeah. As a next step, we plan to replicate these findings to show that they're robust by doing a registered report with 100 subjects and monitoring incentives. And if these findings are robust, they can be integrated to support and study other frameworks. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that very clear talk. We have a question already in the back. Are you ready?
Thank you. That was very interesting. Maybe you're already addressing this in your next step, but I was wondering how much the fact that it's the valence is associated with the prediction error here affects these results. So would you expect similar things if it was like a purely perceptual prediction error? What's your take on that?
You mean if it was like learning or motor prediction error or something?
Sorry?
Do you mean if it was a different domain, not probabilistic learning, but visual perception? Yeah, I think it would work as well.
I mean, specifically if there was no aversiveness in the stimuli. So I was wondering whether the aversiveness is particularly relevant for the...
Yes, I think so. Yeah. But in many cases, when you have prediction error, it's not necessarily... you would still get some larger or smaller prediction error. So I would be personally super curious to look at different domains, like tasks across all domains of perception, learning, or whatever, where you can compute prediction error to see if it works. Maybe the effects would be very small because ours are already super small. Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah, in the front here. Can you throw it back? Should I come?
Thanks a lot, really interesting. I wanted to ask you about this measure of deceleration with respect to what happened just before you present the stimulus, if understood well. Did you try to see if these results also persist if you measure the deceleration with respect to a more global measurement of basic average heart rate variability? Because there is a certain constraint in terms of how much the RR interval can actually dilate with respect to a certain baseline level.
Yeah.
And this type of comparison with respect to the previous trial might be not the most effective way to show the results, or maybe yes. So what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I kind of get what
I
you
don't have the answer because we face exactly the same
Yeah.
type of issue. So
Yeah,
that's why I'm asking.
So it took me almost 3 years to figure that out. So believe me, I tried all kinds of analysis. When you look just at, so here I show changes in subsequent intervals. You could also look at IBI per se, not normalized to the previous one, shows similar results. But in models, we always control for the average heart rate also of subjects because it's mixed linear models. We always kind of have a random intercept and slope that address this issue of individual differences. Naturally, it's not like every time it happens, but I think the models show that happens almost always, but I guess in some cases it wouldn't work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have time for one more question if someone has a burning question.
I actually wanted to say something if there is no questions.
Sure, go ahead.
But I thought that was our time, so. Thank you all for this work. Thanks for the workshops and for symposium. I just wanted to to share my personal opinion about registered reports because we had no talks about open science, reproducibility, and whatnot in here. So I thought I would, because I'm doing a registered report. I think as a community, just to advertise that registered reports are nice and fun and all of that, and to say that as a community, I feel we have accumulated so much evidence already that it doesn't make sense to say anymore, okay, we didn't know what will happen, so we did some exploration and then we wrote a paper. So maybe we can start as a community moving towards a bit away from accidental findings and more towards accumulated, robust knowledge. So this is like a wish from myself, and I know that many of us in heart brain or body brain, we struggle with some what to do and exploration and such, but maybe we can start moving towards reproducing what we found already, and yeah.